Hey guys, today I want to talk to you about closing costs and what to expect on a home loan when it comes to your closing cost dollar amount. So closing costs should really be called settlement charges because you've got two big categories. You've got hard costs and prepaid items rolled together. People call it closing costs. I call it settlement charges. It's all the same thing. So I want to walk you through how to calculate and accurately know what to expect when it comes to closing costs. But first, I'm a licensed loan officer. If this is your first time watching us or if you've watched us before, I appreciate you finding us and taking the time. I hope this information I'm about to share is helpful. So let's jump into it. Closing costs or settlement charges, one and the same. What are they and how do you calculate how much to expect to pay? Well, first of all, I want to tell you what not to do. There's a lot of misnomers on there about how to estimate closing costs. The worst is to apply a percentage to either your loan amount or your purchase price. Guys, if you ever have a loan officer tell you to do this, for example, if a loan officer tells you that your closing costs are going to be 3% of your purchase price or 3% of your loan amount, run for the hills, call another loan officer because that's the worst way to estimate closing costs. The reason is, I'll give you two reasons. One, if you have a $2 million purchase price and a $200,000 purchase price, 3% is either $6,000 or $60,000. And I'm going to tell you that the closing costs don't vary that much between those two purchase prices. A lot of the costs are flat fixed. Some of them are variable, but they're not all variable, so it doesn't increase that much. But the more important reason is that closing costs or settlement charges, guys, they're going to vary based on a number of variables. Number one, location. The city, county, state that you're in is going to dictate a lot of the different fees, and we'll get into what I mean by that. And then also the actual transaction and loan type and scenario have a lot to do with what your costs are. So you cannot just apply a rule of thumb because you're going to be disappointed and you're not going to plan the right way. Financially, you probably would have a pretty rough surprise when you get that actual estimate and you look at that number. So guys, no flat percentage comparisons, and I want to walk you through closing costs and how to actually do it the right way. It's going to take a partnership with your lender, and any lender should be doing this, guys. We do this with all of our clients as part of our consultation, so they go out and they're prepared, they know what to expect, and there's no surprises. So first, let's go through what closing costs are. There are different categories. Number one, lender fees. You're going to have some type of an administration fee, and this varies from lender to lender. I'm not going to tell you that we're the cheapest in the world, but we're very competitive, and every lender is going to have a slightly different administration fee. They're going to call it admin fee, processing and underwriting fee. They're going to come by different names, but it's all the same thing. And then you're going to have points, either origination or discount points. Origination, those are fees that are a cost to do the loan, or technically that's what they're supposed to be. Some lenders charge their administration fees through an origination fee. But a discount point is a little bit different. Discount points are there and charged so that you can buy a rate down below the market rate and have a discounted interest rate for the life of your loan, or if it's an ARM for the term of the fixed period. But either way, discount points are to get you a lower rate. They're optional. It's a strategy. It's a very important strategy, actually. And that's a whole nother video, but make sure that you know if it makes sense in your loan, in the environment, meaning rate environment, and what's supposed to happen in the near future with rates, if it makes sense to do discount points or not. It's not always a yes, it's not always a no, it just is case by case. So those are your main lender fees, and you want to compare your interest rate and the total of your lender fees together when you're comparing different lenders. Now that's, again, another video. This is about how much our closing costs, but just as a side note, when you're comparing lenders, you want to look at all three of those things, admin fees, points, and rate, to find out what the best deal is. And again, that's a whole nother video, but lender fees is number one. Title fees, number two. You're going to run into title fees if you're buying a house. Now, in some states that are attorney states, you're going to have title and attorney states. Arizona, my home state, is an escrow state, so we just have title fees. But if you're buying a house in New York, you're also going to pay attorney's fees. So another example of why a flat rule, percentage rule does not work, and location matters. In New York, it's typically more expensive to get a home loan than in Arizona from this perspective. So basically, you're paying an admin fee, and then you're paying for insurance policies, title insurance policies that the title company requests and provide to make sure that you are the only one that can stake a claim to the property you're purchasing. You don't want someone 5 years down the road after you bought it to say, hey, by the way, I have legal rights to that property. The title company is there to protect you from that. That's what these insurance policies are for. Side note, in some states, for example, in Arizona, typically the seller pays for the owner's insurance policy and the buyer pays for the lender's insurance policy. However, in other states, it may not be that way. Another reason why a different location may be more expensive, and you need to have a lender walk you through those closing cost estimates based on your scenario. Even in Arizona, guys, builders typically do not pay for the owner's insurance policy. So just that one difference, if it's a new build transaction versus a resale, I can add anywhere from $1,000 to $2,500 to the buyer's closing costs for that one fee toggling from seller paid to buyer paid. So again, a detail that really matters. It doesn't fit into a 3% rule. So those are your title fees. There's others. There's endorsements if it's a planned unit development, but title fees are the next category. After that, we've got what we call third-party fees. So you've got an appraisal. If you're buying a house, most likely you're going to need an appraisal. Can that vary? Yes, a little bit. If you have a rural property that the appraiser is going to charge a trip charge to do, or a hard to comp out custom home compared to a very easy to comp out track home, yeah, the appraisal fee may vary by a few $100s. You've got to account for that. That's not going to make a huge difference in the totality. But just to keep in mind, that is another item that can change. Credit report, that's a third-party fee. Not a lot of variance there unless there's some sub-orders that need to be requested, but that doesn't usually move the needle too much either. So let's move on. The next category is your prepaid. We call them prepaid items. Now these are not hard costs to the lender or title company, but you're prepaying for some things that are required when you buy a house. So for example, in the prepaid category, you usually pay for the first year's homeowner's insurance policy. That goes to your insurance company. It's prepaying that first year. And on top of that, we as lenders are required to put a little bit of what we call a cushion or a buffer. It's usually 3 months of homeowner's insurance and property taxes into your escrow account. And those go to help you if and when property taxes and or insurance costs go up. There's a little bit of a buffer to offset those costs for you. We're taking that money from you at closing, putting it in your escrow account. So it's not a cost, it's not a fee, it's sitting there for your use in the future. So that's why we call them prepaids. And then the per diem interest, which if you have questions, please email or text me. I can explain what per diem interest is. But all those things fit in the prepaid category. The last category is sort of a catch-all. I call it the other fees. A good example of what goes into this other fees category, if you're buying a house that has an HOA, oftentimes the buyer is responsible for some kind of HOA fee. It might be a capital contribution fee, some few months of prepaid HOA dues, something that goes to the HOA but doesn't really fit in these other categories. It falls into this other. It's a good catch-all. When you take all these categories, guys, that's what makes up your closing costs, or what I like to call your settlement charges. And as you can see, there's a lot of variable items in there that don't fit into a flat rate 3% rule. And it's important that your lender take the time to help you understand the property or property types that you're looking to buy, what those settlement charges are going to be. Why is that important? Well, that's a huge part of the buying process. Also, and this ties into the next section, who can pay for settlement charges? Well, of course, they're inherently the buyer's responsibility, but you can negotiate, and if they agree, the seller can pay some or all of those closing costs. Well, guys, how do you negotiate properly if you ask a seller to pay your closing costs if you don't have an accurate number? In fact, if you have a number that's too high or too low and you ask for that amount, at the end of it, you're either not going to have enough from the seller to cover your costs, and maybe you thought you did, or you're going to ask the seller to cover too much, and either they're not going to like the big number and they won't agree, or you're going to think you're getting this money from the seller, and at the end of the day, if you got $10,000 and your costs were $8,000, you just lost $2,000 that the seller takes back. They had agreed to give you $10,000, but if your costs were only $8,000, guess what? They only pay $8,000. There's not another $2,000 for them to pay, so they actually make out with an extra $2,000 more than they planned on. So it's really important to get an accurate estimate of what your closing costs and settlement charges are. So let's recap. When you're estimating closing costs or settlement charges, no flat percentage rule is going to work. If a lender or a real estate agent tells you to apply X percent, 3% is the most common that I hear, you want to go and get advice from a lender that knows better. You cannot go that route. You need to actually itemize it and get a specific number that fits your scenario. It's easy to do. There's no cost. There's no reason your lending partner shouldn't take the time with you to do this. You've got different categories of closing costs: lender fees, title fees, third-party fees, prepaid items, and other fees. All of those fees are important to estimate accurately so that you're not surprised and you can plan properly when it comes to your closing costs. Guys, I hope this was helpful. Please email, text, call if you have questions. We're here to help. I'm here to help personally, and then I'd love to see your comments or questions below. Thanks so much.